Yeah, I thought it was a good game. I mean, it, it was a bizarre game in that the Patriots on offense looked like the Patriots, but the defense, it was like you were just looking at a completely different team. I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen in the NFL that a contending team. You see it with bad teams where they rip up their defense and all of a sudden they got something new in there, and you had some familiar faces, but I mean, it was just like you were looking at an entire different defense. And when Mayo got out of there, it was even worse.
Well, it looked like you were looking at a science project.
Exactly. The first half, it looked like Bill Belichick hadn't been informed by league officials that this was a game that counts.
Had he been informed that the screen pass was legal, that other teams could run them other than his own?
I think, and it's bizarre because they're so good at the screen pass that you'd assume that they would be
defending against it in practice all the time.
But then again, you'd think that catchers could hit in baseball. But
Some can, just not here.
I don't even care if this whole season with the Patriots winds up as a throwaway season by 5 games. I like the fact that they're making defensive changes.
No, I think it's the right thing.
They absolutely have not been the best defensive football team since they won the Super Bowl.
Right.
Every year that they did win it, they were the best defensive football team.
Yeah, they've been average on defense. And, I think a lot of people oversimplify that 2017. They say, well, we didn't have the defense. The defense was plenty good enough to win a Super Bowl that year. That was just, they got to the Super Bowl and they lost, but it wasn't. They didn't lose because they didn't have a championship defense.
I disagree.
Did they lose the year before when they blew that big lead in Indy because they didn't have a championship defense?
But that wasn't the championship. They didn't have a championship offense.
They would have won that game if that guy could have caught one ball. Who was it?
Right. Rashay Caldwell.
Yeah.
In 2006, the fact that that team got to, that's a medical condition, by the way. We shouldn't mock him for that.
Maybe I have it.
But the time that that trip to the AFC Championship game and almost beating Indianapolis was one of the the great coaching jobs of Bell. Probably his best besides 2001, just because they didn't have. I don't know why he decided that he just didn't want to have receivers that year. It was a pretty strange, and it's kind of echoed this year. I mean, he really. It almost seems like Belichick / the organization is willing to. They're willing to leverage every season. They're willing to leverage it for something in the future, or, if they don't want to pay a guy a certain amount because they think it's going to have a detrimental effect, they're not going to pay him, even if they need that guy. And Seymour is a good example of that. It's obviously the Mayo subtraction makes you miss Seymour more. Seymour more. But Richard Seymour would look awfully. He was missed. But they had no presence.
Like you said, the Mayo injury is part of that because now you've got a lot more movement behind the line than you would have had, and that kind of changed things up. Maybe Burgess was going to be an outside linebacker, but now he's going to play defensive end, and because now Thomas has to move in the middle. Things got moved around so much.
Yeah.
But it's hard to really judge. I think you'll have a better idea of what the defense will be this week when they've known all week that they're going to play without Mayo.
They'll make the adjustments, but at a certain point, and this is what they found out in 2006, that all the coaching and all the good players can't cover up a lack of talent in certain areas. Their lack of receiving talent in 2006 absolutely cost them the Super Bowl. So, if, I don't know if they just might be too thin at linebacker, especially without Mayo, but they have a lot of players. They have a lot of good players that have pedigrees that should be able to play in the league. It's just a question of
how soon.
How soon is it, and
how much can these guys come together? Whereas, one of the things about the defense for so many years was the continuity.
Right.
Yeah, they were getting old, but they were getting old together.
Right.
So the fact that you have to basically start over with chemistry in addition to scheme is a whole problem too.
What about the Jets this weekend? Any thoughts on them? I liked the Jets a lot. I think they have a real good team. I think that's a team that if the Patriots rebuilding isn't going to go their way, and Randy Moss and Brady are getting a year older, I think the Jets are the one team that is kind of moving to possibly be able to surpass the Patriots someday because they have a great young base.
What can we say about Mark Sanchez so far? He looked good.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we've lost Kuchar. Hold on, let's get our technicals. Can we get the gaffer in here? Gary.
Try that.
How
Is he
about
back?
now?
Thanks, Gary. Gary, our gaffer, he does a great job every week. You know, we can only pay him $30,000 a year, but
I guess God didn't want me to question the Houston Texans.
Whether the Houston Texans are any good?
I think to have seen that game, Sanchez played a very solid game. I mean, he's got Kotchery's a good weapon. He's got Leon Washington.
I love Leon Washington.
That
guy's awesome.
Those are quality pieces, but can a young quarterback come in here? And I understand we're talking about what the talent level of this defense is. Can a young quarterback come in here and
what's in New York, correct?
Yes, it is in New York.
Come in against the Patriots.
Come in. There you
Just
go.
Clarifying.
It's in New Jersey.
For the listeners, thank you.
Yes.
It's clarification hour.
I'm
Gary.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, especially when I don't want to cut you off when you are talking football because
no, go ahead.
You don't like to. But the one thing about the Jets that I keep going back to though is it seems like they're putting the pressure on themselves to make that leap over the Patriots, and instead of just worrying about can we come together as a good young team? Can we start to make progression? They've just got their eye on New England too much. And I'm starting to worry if maybe that's not a good thing for them because
they definitely have their eye on New England, though. Yeah, I agree with you.
I mean, you can't deny that with the comments that are coming out of there.
They had him pre-record a message and call Holmes of Jets fans saying, "Hey, please be loud."
Yeah. And
I don't think you have the Belichick calls going around, guys. If you could just whatever. Thanks.
But I think if you start to worry too much about the other team and you're overlooking yourself, and we see that in other sports all the time where one team will try to build to what the other team is doing, Red Sox, Yankees, and it doesn't always work out in that favor, and you end up stunting your growth at times if you do that.
Also, smoking does that.
Yes.
Well, I think if we're just looking at the short term, that Jets defense is not stopping the Patriots.
You can't say that.
I'm not so sure.
I mean, you can't
really. I mean, we clearly. Oh Lord, it's broken.
Gary,
again. This is a sign that I should not talk about football.
Yeah, it
the
really
Jets
is.
Defense in particular.
I mean,
we saw a lot of rust on Brady, and we especially saw it, I think, on Welker. I mean, he looked. He had Watson-like hands. Can we still say that after
Welker
the?
Was a little rusty. He didn't.
Well, he didn't play in the preseason.
He didn't have a great 2008 either. I mean, he's asked to do a lot, but he was so perfect in 2007. Maybe we're a little spoiled, but I mean.
Oh, he still led the team last year.
Yeah, no, he's plenty good. He's kind of the ultimate system guy to a certain extent. I mean,
but that works.
Sure, no, it's a great play, but I mean, you don't have it without 8-1 on the other side.
Yes.
That's Randy Moss.
That is your